Good morning. I'm Danny, and I'm here with Cristian. He's a lead certified CMMC assessor and also the director of DefenseX, the CMMC experts. How you doing, Cristian?
Doing great. Thanks, Danny.
Cristian, I was hoping you could elaborate on one of the topics that's come up when we are describing for defense contracts out there. What's the difference between an MSP, a managed service provider, and an enclave? I'm a little unclear what that is, so I'm asking on behalf of the contractors out there if you could unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, I can definitely provide clarity to that. So there's not necessarily like, if you will, a MSP versus an enclave, the difference between the both. You can an enclave, just to clarify what that means, is most organizations have some kind of an IT network or IT systems, probably already. It might just be your Office 365. It could be a small corporate network. For some large contractors, it could be a very large multinational, multi-global network with all sorts of IT equipment and firewalls and different cloud systems, all of them composing their IT systems. What an enclave is if you don't want to, for a particular reason, and there's some organizations for which this makes sense, there's some for which it doesn't make sense, but if you don't want to bring all of those current IT systems into to be subject to the CMMC Level 2 requirements, typically, or to be subject to the CMMC assessment, because in some cases that would be a massive assessment and a massive workload to get all of those IT systems and get them compliant with the CMMC Level 2 standards. If you don't want to do that, or it doesn't make sense for your organization, then that's when an enclave might be your best solution. An enclave is a small little segment of IT systems that still belongs to your organization, but those little small segment of IT systems are the ones that are in scope for the CMMC Level 2 compliance. That's where you're going to keep your CUI. That's where you might keep your FCI, even potentially. And it is a distinct, logically or physically separated IT system that is specifically designed for that and for meeting all the CMMC Level 2 requirements. It's going to be distinct and separated from the rest of the systems of the organization so that those don't have to be brought into that compliance boundary or into the assessment scope. You'll only be getting held accountable, if you will, by the government for that enclave worth of systems and not necessarily everything else. Of course, a successful enclave depends on you using it for its intended purpose, which is one of the difficulties that you run into whenever you start getting into enclaves and such. Does that make sense?
It does. So I'm a business. I'll give a scope size. I have a 40-person team. We build some sort of schematics for, say, the Air Force. So my team of 40 people, let's say 30 of them are my engineers, my comm guys, the guys that are really technical doing the CUI or higher level work, but they're the ones that do it. And then over here are my 10 support people, whether it's payroll, IT, whatever it is. But in an enclave, those 30 people that are touching the CUI, FCI, they're the only ones that can receive, touch, manage, send out that CUI or that higher level data. These other 10 folks, if one of them happens to touch that data or receive something that should have been in the enclave, like a walled city, just think of like Europe, old walled cities, anything comes out of it, you've violated the intent and spirit of CMMC. It is possible to have an enclave, but you really have to have the discipline and the care that nothing comes out of those walls. Is that another way to put it for me, maybe?
That's correct. Yeah, that is correct. Unfortunately, depending on the way that you do an enclave, I really believe enclaves make sense for some organizations. They don't make sense for others. That distinction of having to do this type of work over here and this type of work over here, it starts becoming very administratively burdensome. In addition to the fact that in some ways it can miss some of the intent with just the CMMC program and cybersecurity law at large. As both you and I know from our times in the Marine Corps, a little term called classification by compilation. We do our training and how, we might inadvertently be generating sensitive information even outside of a secured system, just by virtue of the fact that our primary information system is not the secure system. And that's one of the risks that you can fall into. And even in the industry, some organizations that create these enclaves, if you will, for hosting the CUI. A lot of times, unfortunately, there's little jokes that get made about them. They can get called empty claves because there's nothing in them
Nothing's in
ever.
there. Yeah.
They don't use them for anything. And it really begs the question, like, hey, if it's not getting used, but the work that you do deals with this type of sensitive information, where's this information at?
Yeah.
Of course, most of the time, unfortunately, it'll be in the other primary information system. There's a lot of nuances that go along with enclaves. In our opinion, I think they are very valid approaches for some organizations. Let me give you an example of one that I think an enclave is the way to go. Most large organizations and companies that do work, commercially, internationally, and only have a small business segment that does work with the government. Yeah, I was recently having a talk with an organization like this. They're a multinational architecture firm. They do work with all sorts of countries throughout the globe. They have offices in Europe. They have a massive IT network and meet all of the international cybersecurity standards, pretty much anything that's out there. Very reputed international organization. And they have a small business segment. It's about 20 to 30 people that do work with the US government and with the Department of Defense, Department of War. And those little sub-segment of 20 people, which probably represents like 1% of the whole organization, they deal with CUI and with FCI. And for those folks, probably when this organization, they want to keep doing business with the Department of Defense, with the US government. And so they're going to need to have somewhere to use their CUI to host at the FCI as well. And so for them, does it make sense to bring the entire multinational organization and all of their IT systems and all the people in Europe and everything under the CMMC Level 2 compliance boundary? My answer to them would be absolutely not. That'd be a nightmare. It would be just crazy. And why would you want to do that? Like 99% of that organization will never even see FCI or CUI.
Right.
So for those folks, in my recommendation, it would be, hey, create a small enclave for that business unit, for that US government team or the DoD contracting team. Create them their little Office 365 in a compliant cloud like GCC High. There's a lot of integrations you can do between the clouds nowadays. GCC High is a very capable cloud. By and large, they're going to be, a lot of times they'll get the company name, email address, and just add like a company name, federalteam.com, and that's how you know that they're probably using an enclave. That makes them a little bit distinct from the rest of the organization. They still collaborate, still can access the same IT systems, but they'll just have a separate policies and procedures and IT systems to support that little business unit. For an organization like that, well, yeah, 100%. I think the enclave route is the right route, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I'll give you an example of an organization that I don't think it's the right route whatsoever. If you are a small business out there, you have 20, 30 users, all are contracted to do work that requires the CMMC Level 2 certification on behalf of the government. You're creating PowerPoint presentations that are CUI. You're working with other documents that could be CUI. Everybody's generating FCI. And I'm doing an enclave for something like that. It doesn't make sense. Your entire organization needs it. Why would you make them work in two IT systems? Let me get on my secure account today and on my not secure account today. Ultimately, it's a setup that's probably going to lead to failure. It's going to lead to you inadvertently putting sensitive information in the non-secure system. A lot of people also forget about FCI, Federal Contract Information, when they get tunnel vision on the CUI to meet all the CUI compliance requirements, but you forget that federal contract information, which is one of the types of information that CMMC cares about, also has its own compliance requirements. You can't just have this super secure CUI system and then everything else goes into this Wild West whatever system. Then unfortunately, you're going to be out of compliance. Not for an organization like that. We would recommend something that's called the all-in approach. Just migrate have the primary system be the secure system. Have everybody just be working on the secure system. They just get one account. They get all the normal load out of application, desktop, computer, everything, except it's all rated for FCI, it's all rated for CUI, and you're ready to do some work with the government. Typically, we get the question a lot like, well, only about 70% of our organization has the CUI or the DFARS requirements. We have about 30% that don't deal with CUI, but they do deal with FCI because they're in another government contract, but it doesn't deal with CUI. What should we do about that? And generally speaking, if more than 50 or 60% of your organization is going to require or has the DFARS requirements or the CUI rated information system requirements, if more than 50, 60% of your organization has it, put your entire organization into the secure environment. Because cutting up organizations into different IT systems, like you guys work from this one, you guys work over here, how do you do a collaboration? It starts getting very messy. Or even whenever this work is outsourced, service provider, like, hey, the service provider takes care of our secure system here, and then, somebody is just the Wild West over here for our other primary not secure information system. Then, unfortunately, and like we talked about, wherever is your primary information system, that's where the information's probably going to go.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of times those Wild West ones, it can be real Wild West. Like I'm talking no passwords, no anything. And so you just got to be careful and consider some of these things whenever you're considering a CUI enclave as a solution.
You don't want a spillage. So that's something that whoever determined that's not for us as users or contractors to determine that really isn't. There's really no gray area. So to reinforce, I think what you're saying is it's better to avoid and mitigate the risk if the majority of your team is handling that is some level of CUI, FCI or higher. Put it all on the higher side, not high side, on the higher level of security, and you're safe. Us as contractors, we don't have that authority to determine something goes up or down. We play within the rules. The other one, Cristian, is I'm going to ask this is more of a situational question. Am I as a company less reachable if I am on GCC High? So in my mind, I would think, again, if most of us operated in a secure environment or different levels of security, and we had to go to a separate place to use certain assets, and you can even have a phone in there. Like it just seems like you're less reachable. But on GCC High, am I at risk of losing business and clients because I am on a different level of Microsoft and I'm less reachable? What does that feel like to me?
What I would say to that is absolutely not. We have a number of organizations that obviously do the migration to GCC High. We ourselves internally live in GCC High with people commercially from all over the world. Microsoft Teams still allows for collaboration meetings. If you have that enabled, with guest users from other clouds, any kind of collaboration, if you will, difficulties or hiccups are not exclusive to GCC High. They're just to every single collaboration platform. It doesn't matter. Even if you're in Office 365 commercially and you're trying to work with an organization that's using Google Meet, and you get that Google Meet like, oh, I don't have this app on my computer. I got to get on the web browser and do the thing. Or you get an invite from somebody that's using Zoom. Oh man, okay, where do I get that code from? Like, get that code to join their meeting. Oh, this other one's doing WebEx. Hey, everybody, install WebEx because we're going to hop on their WebEx call.
All that works on GCC High.
So a lot of those fears and such, there are some more strict compliance requirements that Microsoft had to undergo at the, imposition of the government. By and large, from all the organizations that we migrate to GCC High, it's business as usual. They have their Outlook, their emails, they're sending emails to, just as usual. They're having Teams calls with commercial organizations, with other organizations in different clouds. By and large, it's pretty much business as usual, just with all the security and compliance requirements implemented.
So professionally doing work, there's no issue, no hiccups. But if I want to start meandering off and doing gambling or doing other stuff that I probably ought not be doing at work, those things are inhibited. So PSA to office managers and business owners, it's also a good way to sort of, herd your cats toward, hey, stick to doing work because that's the main thing you're doing.
We actually get positive feedback from a lot of corporate leadership. They weren't aware that maybe in the corporate workstations that their employees had all these apps installed, had all these things installed.
Yeah.
Once the CMMC Level 2 security compliance requirements come into place, then they really know. Like we'll tell them exactly what software is getting used in their organization. we'll tell them exactly what websites are getting visited.
Yeah. It's not Big Brother. It's just, I mean, it's management. Dealing with people is the hardest thing, and change and
no, and it's all about
benefits.
doing that security controls in place, looking for insider threats. But generally speaking, it's business as usual. For doing work, and it makes it so that the place that you're doing work at is the secure place where the sensitive information is probably going to go, and hey, it's rated for that. So I think it's a great way to go. Now, something else about the enclaves is there's different ways you can do an enclave, if you will. You as a user, myself, Cristian, you could do an enclave where I have an account to this secure information system over here, and then I have my normal, not in the enclave account. Two information systems for the given user. We don't love that approach. That typically does not end up going towards a great pathway for compliance. Like we talked about, you're at the very least still going to have federal contract information in that primary information system. And what we see a lot of times is those secure ones just get forgotten about. And then asking your user to faithfully use two different information systems, it's just not a great user experience. It's not a pathway that, in our opinion, is very conducive to success. Another way of implementing an enclave, like I talked about earlier, is by moving just a whole sub-segment of users to a secure system to use as their primary information system. Like I talked about earlier with a multinational organization, and they moved these 40 users and put them fully in the secure system. So they'd have a secure computer, have a secure cloud, have their apps and all that type of requirements, and they're using that primary information system. In our opinion, that's a better way to do an enclave. It's a very, very high chance that all of the sensitive information is going to be there and in IT systems rated for the secure system. And in our view, there's many ways of implementing that architecture that don't hinder collaboration with the rest of the organization. Like I mentioned, GCC High is very capable. They're still going to have their full collaboration capabilities with the other members of their organization, even though they're living in the secure, the certified segment of that of their information system. So that's different ways of implementing it. Also considering the enclaves is who's doing the work. Who is setting up the enclave for you? Who's going to maintain it for you? Who's going to do all the documentation and all of the associated CMMC requirements? Because at the end of the day, it's still just an information system that needs to meet all of the CMMC controls. So somebody has to do all that. And that's where there's different approaches. There's some service providers that'll just set it up for you, give you the keys, walk away, and the organization is responsible for the ongoing maintenance, ongoing monitoring, all of the ongoing requirements. The frequent approach that's more common, that's via some kind of a managed services provider, or some kind of, like, at the end of the day, they're a managed services provider. Some organization that manages that enclave for you, makes sure that it stays in compliance, does all the security requirements for it. We do that at DefenseX as well for some organizations that are a good fit for an enclave. Although we find most of the organizations that we do business with, because we're so focused on small to medium-sized businesses, most of them end up doing the all-in approach. So we don't actually see that many enclaves that we manage, but we do have that capability as well. And so there's different ways. Hopefully this, gave some light on enclaves, what they are, some of the different considerations to be had, from user experience to scope of the organization, to who's going to do the enclave for you. There's obviously several things to consider before signing up and choosing it as your CMMC strategy.
I'm reminded by my George Costanza wallet in my back pocket about the cost. And I know the price has changed from Microsoft. That's the service we're primarily talking about here, what we're talking about. So if I'm a business and I think I'm going to do an enclave approach, so I'm going to have my commercial Microsoft 365 over here, and over here I'm going to have my government suite of Microsoft 365. But I myself am accessing both. If I'm not mistaken, I'm paying for both subscriptions, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Could it be cheaper where I just say, I'm just going to go 100% to the high? Is that true, or is that not true? Because it seems to me that would be the right thing to do for just cost savings.
Yeah, it could certainly be cheaper. We've seen organizations that retained all of their licensing from the, if you will, not secured environment, then, paid for those licenses for the secure environment. And yeah, at the end of the day, you're paying for 2 licenses for 1 user. If you're doing that approach, you're probably better off just getting rid altogether of the non-secure environment, having them work in the secure one, and not pay for duplicate licensings. If you're a government contractor today and you have the CMMC level 2 requirement, or you think you have the CMMC requirement, what I'd recommend to you is to go on our website and book a complimentary consultation. We'll hop on a call with you, talk through your business needs, through the type of work that you do, help you determine what type of compliance requirement your organization might have, clarify any requirements associated with CMMC, maybe answer some common questions, and leave you off with as much clarity and hopefully a clear pathway as possible. We consider ourselves servants, supporting those who are supporting the warfighter, and therefore it would be an honor to serve you.